Hey YouTube, what is up? No, I didn't die or anything like that. I just got a job that takes up a lot more of my free time than I initially anticipated. So I'm not going to be making videos all that frequently, to be honest with you. I don't have the time for that, nor really like the temperament. I don't like making videos every day just to pump out a video. I'm not trying to make a living off of YouTube. I just want to post something that I find interesting myself, and that's kind of what this channel is going to become. I'm not looking for, I'm not looking to really be doing any 10-minute card discussions or anything similar to that. All I'm going to be doing is if I find something personally interesting, I'm going to talk about it. And that's really what this channel is going to be going forward. Obviously, this is all Yu-Gi-Oh related, but still, stuff like regional reports and format discussions, more so than is card, X good, that kind of thing. So with that being said, this last Saturday, I actually went to the regionals that was happening in Parsippany, New Jersey. My friends were going, they invited me along, and it was a very interesting regional, to say the least. It was probably the nicest regional I've ever been to. The tables were actually like marble. It was really weird. It was like a convention center in a hotel, so it was actually very nice. Everybody had enough room. The population was pretty high. I think there was 406 players, but even with that many active participants, everybody had enough room to play their mats, put their mats out completely, not be on top of someone else's mat, and on top of that, be able to put like your deck box, your drinks to the side. The room was huge, and there was more than enough space, and that's really what I want, regionals to actually be going forward. In the past, regionals kind of sucked, especially in Brooklyn. You were all over your opponent, and everybody was just kind of mutually sweating, which was kind of fucking gross. This place had like the air conditioning cranked. It had full cell phone service, which is a miracle. So it was a really great experience overall. But what I really wanted to discuss was the actual matchups I had, because this is the most varied format I've personally taken place in since Duelist Alliance, and I'd say it was more varied than most of my matchups for Duelist Alliance, because back then there was really like 4 good decks that were on even footing. This time around I played a whole hell of a lot more than 4 decks, so it was really interesting to say the least, and that's what I want to kind of get into a discussion about. So basically I decided to play turn 2 Spirals. My friend Kasim told me that the format was pretty varied. I was assuming it was more like Zodiac, where basically everybody was playing Zodiac or some variant of it. In this instance, it actually was the complete opposite. He said it could be a mixed bag. He got 5th place at the regional, that was the week before, so he had probably the most relevant information. I was gonna main Cherries just for the Spiral matchup, and he said not to do that because you don't know if you're even gonna go up against Spirals. And I thought that was crazy, because in my mind, Spirals, turn 2 Spirals is the best deck, and everyone's gonna be playing it. Nobody's gonna be playing anything else. And I was wrong. I only played Spirals actually once, and it was really interesting. So shout out to Kasim for telling me not to main Ghost Cherries and to main Ogre instead. Ogre punishes a lot more of these rogue decks and these, I guess, tier 2 decks, a lot more than it does like Spiral and stuff like that. So it really depends on your matchups, but he made an excellent meta call, told me to put the Ogres in, and they were way better than Cherries would have ever been, to be honest. So shout out to you, Kasim. And with that, let's get into this actual tournament report. First round, I actually played up against a guy that was playing World Chalice on a cardboard mat, so I knew I kind of had the game at that point, to be honest with you. He was a little younger, he was a kid, he was interested in the deck. He actually knew all the full combos, like to end with a broken Tri-Gate board and stuff like that. I just happened to open Gamma, and he normal summoned Venus, which I Gamma'd when he tried to summon a token, and pretty much that was it. Game 2, I opened Max C against him, and that was it as well, because I just out-resourced him after that on turn 2. I drew too many hand traps that basically he couldn't play through all of them, even though he opened pretty much the perfect combo for World Chalice. But I still ended up getting the game 2 because of Max C, and that's kind of a recurring trend. I drew Max C in the last game, like game 3, game 2, the one to decide the winner of the round. 6 out of 9 rounds. I don't know what it was, but I kept seeing Max C, and I wasn't questioning it because I really love having Max C going second. Round 2, I actually went up against, which I thought was a very interesting deck, Light Sworn Zombies, 60 cards with That Grass, even though That Grass is at 1. That was a very interesting deck. I just happened to open pretty good, and that's something I noticed. Going second Spirals, you pretty much never have a really bad hand. You really can play out of almost anything as long as you open up 1 or 2 hand traps, and you really never open like no hand traps. That's a very rare occurrence because you play 11 to 12, so odds are you're gonna open at least one of them. Just you pretty much have like a 1 in 4 chance of opening them. So I noticed that I never really got a bad hand except for once, but I'll get to that later. Getting back to the guy that plays the Light Sworn Zombie deck, his deck was very interesting as well. I just happened to open up the ability to stop him with my hand traps, and then on turn 2 overpower his cards with Sleeper. That was pretty much the thing that decided the game completely. Having resort stopping targeting is a great thing, especially when they have Fairy Tale Snow. It doesn't really affect you then, and your whole deck is Spirals, you're not really summoning anything else, so it doesn't really matter if they have Fairy Tale Snow. They just basically get a free summon to block, but they don't really get the Book of Moon, which is what hurts you the most. They can't book Link monsters. Their deck was really reliant on being able to book you, and now with Links you can't book them, and that's pretty big actually. Game 2, I opened Maxi against him as well. Kind of a blowout, to be honest with you. I thought I had him. There was a point where he had 2 cards in hand, no cards on field, and he drew for turn, and he happened to draw Left Arm Offering. I didn't have the Ash, so he literally dished the 2 cards, searched that grass, milled 25 on me, and was completely back in the game, which was actually pretty hype. That was a pretty good top deck. Sleeper was still able to overpower him, though, because I did have a Resort, and my monsters were pretty much untargetable. Round 3, I went up against the first thing that I would consider a meta deck, which was Trickstar. The guy played it very well. He let me go second in that he basically chose to go first, and I do have to mention that it's actually very tough going second. When you go up against your friends and your locals, it's a little easier to just let your opponent go blind first, but in this format, especially when I was considering how much random decks I was going up against, it was really tough, to be honest with you. Especially like with the Lightsworn player, I had no idea what to side, so it was really a kind of tough thing to teach yourself. It's like when the format is very varied, you kind of see the little more skillful things come out, where it's like you have to learn how to side a little better. Even if you don't have the most optimal side cards, you learn to side with what you have and how to play with what you have. It's kind of like trying to solve a puzzle with pieces that might fit. That's the best way I could put it. I really enjoy these more varied formats. But as I was saying, round 3, I went up against Trickstar. He went first, and I just opened the nuts against him. Game 2 against the Trickstar player as well, I drew Maxi, and that almost cost me the game, actually. I Maxi'd him. This was a turn 3. I had no monsters on board. I kind of bricked a little bit, like I had too many hand traps. That wasn't a brick, I guess, but I didn't have the full spiral combo. I had, some monsters, but nothing specific, and then I had no cards on field, and he proceeded to try and do the infinite OTK with Licorice and Firewall, but thanks to Max C, I was losing life points repeatedly. Thankfully enough, I eventually drew, the out to his combo, and I basically saved myself, got Sleeper out next turn, and overpowered him. But I really learned a lesson, and that's time your Max C with Trickstar very carefully, because when you chain for burning and they can just chain bounce, it's a very dangerous combo. Round 4 was the first time I actually lost. I went up against True Draco Rock Spirit Stun. There's a new Rock Spirit card that I didn't know about. It's a level 4, you normal summon it, and basically your opponent can't use, or you and your opponent, neither player can activate monster effects unless they're spirit monsters. So it was really, really strong. I couldn't do anything with my hand traps in hand. He went first. It was a very spicy deck. He ended up finishing, I think, top 8. I think he got 8th place specifically. It was a very inventive deck. He also played the Monarch's Erupt, which is very funny because I actually asked him how many cards he played in his extra deck before the game started, and he thought I had like a read on him, but being that I played Monarchs in different formats, like in ABC format, knowing that you're going up against that does help a little bit. I unfortunately didn't read Monarch's Erupt well enough, and I tried to summon a Borolo to not be targeted, but it negates effects. It doesn't negate activated effects, which was my misgiving, and he was able to blow me out because of that. He really played well, and it was a very inventive deck. I might try to play that in the future, that or Trickstars, because Trickstars is also very reactionary, and it's a little bit more about player skill than the combo cards you kind of draw. Round 5, I actually lost to Paleo. I didn't expect to go up against Paleo. I let him go first. He blew me out game 1. I went first game 2, blew him out with Sleeper and Twin Twister. Game 3, he went first, and I thought I had, a pretty decent chance because the only set 1 had Tree Toad. But unfortunately for me, I did brick. I drew 3 Foolish Burial Goods, so I pretty much only had, out of 3 cards in my hand, 1 being live because you can't activate more than 1 per turn. And then I drew 2 Resort. It was almost like I got reverse stacked because I pile shuffled the same number, and I think I just stacked myself, unfortunately, in a very bad way. My draw for turn was Super Agent, and he had set back row. I thought I could play through it, just call it Super Agent. He negated it with Toad, took my Super Agent, and then I activated Spiral Resort because I thought I baited him properly, and he flips over Mistake. So I can't add cards to my hand except for drawing them, and that really cost me the game because my entire hand was literally only ways to search monsters or send cards from deck to grave that were spells. So none of that really helped me, unfortunately, and that's what really cost me the game. He OTK'd me the next turn after that with a couple Toads. So that was the first time I lost to a brick, and I was kind of mad about it. Round 6 was the first time I went up against Pendulums. This guy main decked Side Blocker, but I didn't see it game 1. He didn't side into game 2. Game 1 I actually beat him. I was able to sleeper pop his scales and stuff like that. Turn 2 because I stopped him. He Pendulum called, I ashed, he scooped. That was pretty much it after I sleepered him. Game 2, I also happened to draw Max C. I basically activated it before he Pendulum to see if he would even go for the turn. He gave me a lot of cards. He went Harmonizing, harmonizing, summon the monster, make a Tornado Dragon so he could pop his scale and get the trap, which was a smart play, to be honest with you, but he also pendulumed out Psyblocker at that point, and I knew I was cooked until after he made Tornado Dragon and didn't activate Psyblocker yet. I drew Gamma off the Tornado Dragon, and I knew I was actually fine then because Psyblocker is an activated effect, and it's not spell speed 2, it's spell speed 1, so I just waited for him to activate it, chained my Psyblocker, and then he scooped as well because he knew I had the full Spiral combo. Round 7 was the only time I actually played Spiral, and he was playing going first Spiral, not going second. Game 1, he blew me out, he got the full combo, I didn't have enough hand traps to stop him. Game 2, I let him go first again, but this time I drew Ogre, Ash, and Gamma, which was more than enough to stop him, and then I had the ability to get my own sleeper out, and then that basically just ensured I had game. I did the exact 8,000 combo because he had no cards. After that, Game 3, he went first again. I asked him why he was going first with Spirals, and he said he has the option to go second because he could side into the going second cards, and that did make some sense to me. However, in Game 3, I drew Cherries and I drew Evenly Matched, so I cherries him, stopped him from getting the full combo. He overcommitted and he didn't have the ability to search out his sleeper at that point, so from there, he literally just, basically set 2, ended his turn. I evenly matched him, and then he scooped because he knew I had the combo after that. It was a very interesting game. He had a good idea of what turn 1 Spiral should be, it just didn't work out in that example. Round 8 was the first time I actually played a deck twice, and that's the second time I played Trickstar. Trickstar is another reactionary deck like I mentioned before. It's more about player skill than what you draw, but sometimes not having the cards in hand needed to get the initial push is kind of what dooms you. Unfortunately for him, I had enough hand traps to stop him from searching. He reincarnationed me and I ashed it, and that was unfortunately a game because I got my sleeper out, destroyed his board. Game 2, I drew Maxi, chained it, almost got caught in the same fucking combo again because I'm stupid. Drew that out again when I was around like 1,600 life points, and then I proceeded to OTK him on the next turn because I just basically emptied his board after that point with Sleeper. It's really unfortunate how powerful Sleeper is, especially when you do it with like Master Plan. You build such a ridiculous board off of Master Plan because in and of itself that card is literally +3, and then Sleeper, once you get the last resort off of Master Plan, is literally free destroy 2. It's almost like a Fire Lake for Burning Abyss, and that card is nuts. Sleeper is really just unfair, and I really do think Spirals is going to get hit on the next ban list. Even though there is a lot of decks that are varied in this format, I think Spirals is just a little too powerful, to be honest with you. And round 9 was the first time I felt like Yugi in a long time. Pretty much I played Pendulums. He knew what I was playing. I saw him and I talked to him. In previous rounds, we sat next to each other. We both knew what the other person was playing. He knew I was playing Spiral. I knew he was playing Pendulums. He won the die roll, got to go first. I actually beat him out going second with Spiral. Against his Pendulums, he opened a pretty good board, but I drew evenly matched, and that was that. It just cleared his board for free. Game 2, I didn't draw almost any hand traps. I think I only drew... I sided in Cherries because I didn't want him to double Omega me, and I was able to actually use the Cherries specifically on Omega. Unfortunately for me, he just made Baguska and that locked me out, and then on the second turn he OTK'd me. Game 3, I decided to go second and I let him go first. He made an almost identical board of Baguska, which locked me out for an entire turn. I had no useful cards in hand. He was able to basically just chip away at me. And then basically on his second turn, he had I think 6 or 7 cards on board, 2 face-up scales, he had Astrograph Sorcerer, and then he had Baguska, but he put it into attack positions because he was trying to game me. Unfortunately for him, he did the math wrong, and on the next turn, I had no cards on field, and the only cards I had in hand were Super Agent, Big Red with no target in grave, and I believe I had Master Plan, so it was kind of a brick. I think I had Master Plan. Either way, the third card was kind of irrelevant, but I had no useful cards in hand and no way to get my actual combo off. For turn, I drew Magical Spring, which was nuts because if I didn't actually draw anything useful, I was going to be gamed next turn. I had no cards on field, no monsters in grave, so I was in a very dangerous position. So I drew Magical Spring, activated it, drew Quick Fix and evenly matched, discarded the Quick Fix, summoned it back after I evenly matched him, basically wiped his whole board, and I just got my full combo off because I drew those 2 or 3, I guess, specific cards in that order. It was actually really broken. It was a free way to get Quick Fix to grave. It was a free way to clear his board. And to be honest, I kind of felt bad opening like that against him. It really wasn't any fault of his own. It's just you can't account for top decks sometimes. But that's something I was kind of referring to before, is that Spiral just seems to have a way to play out of almost anything. And that's why I think that deck is going to get hit eventually, or at least on this next ban list. This is pretty much my last chance to play Spiral. And I'm glad I actually got to enjoy it because I never really played it in the full format before. I didn't get to play it full power, so it was good to actually play the deck. I really enjoyed the way Spiral operated, and going second was definitely a different way to play the game. Most formats rely on you going first, and when you get to go second, it's just a completely different style of play. So I really enjoyed seeing the game from a different perspective because of that. Ultimately, I went 7-2. My only 2 losses being to the guy that got 8th place with True Draco and the guy that got Paleo. I think I ended up 15th. 15th was the place I got out of 406, so I did pretty decent. I wish I got to do a little better, but it is what it is.
And it was at that point that my memory card actually completely filled, and it was actually pretty funny that it ended at the right point in the sentence. But other than that, I do want to apologize that my audio isn't the clearest. Basically, until I got into post-production, I didn't realize that my microphone didn't record the audio properly. I was forced to use the in-camera audio so it could kind of pick up my computer fans a little more, and it was a little noisier. That's something I hope to remedy in the future. I'm going to fix the microphone situation. But thank you guys again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and click subscribe because it's free, it's fun, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.